Majority Report with Sam Cedar, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
It is Friday, December 6, 2019. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Brandon Sutton from The Discourse will be with us in studio. Also on the program today, David Feldman from The David Feldman Show will be with us. It's Casual Friday, folks. It's never really casual anymore these days. Subpoenaed call logs show Rudy and Trump used unsecured lines in hatching their Ukrainian scheme. Another mass shooting leaves 3 dead in Pensacola. The Senate confirms 8 Trump lifetime court picks in 3 days, including one who was ranked not qualified by the ABA. Uber discloses 3,000 reports of sexual abuse and 235 rapes in its vehicles in 2018. And new poll shows that Democratic nominees should embrace pot to win in 2020.
Hell yeah.
H.R. 4 looks to hit the floor of the House. It's a bill to restore Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. 1.5 million people march in France against austerity. 1.5 million. Suspensions handed out in a West Virginia prison guard Nazi salute photo scandal. White House quashes the Armenian genocide resolution again. Bernie introduces a $150 billion plan for high-speed internet across the country. And Pelosi looks to strip internet companies' liability shield from the new NAFTA. All this and more on today's program. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Pleasure to have you. I'm wearing my soft-collared shirt. We're wearing a lot of hoodies are happening right now in the studio because it's Friday. And actually, that happens almost every day.
Yeah, I do a hoodie
I do not wear the hoodie, and Brendan does, and Michael wears a hoodie quite a bit.
I'm wearing a fancy hooded sweatshirt, all right?
All right, so a hoodie. It's
There's
a hooded.
no zipper. It's fancy.
All right. Well,
it's
that's
French.
like
It's Canadian.
Still a hoodie, just a slightly different style of hoodie. Couple of bits of house cleaning before we head off into this program today. Folks, we're heading towards that time of the year where we look back on the year and we play the best of interviews of the past year on this program. So if you have suggestions, and I know some people have already emailed in the past, and we'll search through there, but put the words best of in your subject line and send them to majorityreporters@gmail.com, best of. And we will endeavor to make your pick our picks for the end of the year. I think we're probably going to do 6 best of shows. Maybe that it depends on when the weekend falls over the course of our vacation in Christmas. And then, of course, we'll put we do deep archive stuff for members. So you get stuff from way back during the old Majority Report with Janine and I. And maybe some other stuff mixed in there.
Well, for the Christmas shows, we do best of the year show. And then the best of like the fun half stuff afterwards. So we don't do the archives for Christmas shows typically.
Oh, okay. All right, Matt. I'm glad you're on that. That's exactly what you should be doing, being on top of that. Good. There you go. So best of, and we'll do that. And also, if you have suggestions, folks email and ask at this time of year, suggestions for charities, organizations that you think people should contribute to, and you have suggestions, send them to us at majorityreporters@gmail.com. People ask that all the time. I've been doing over the past couple of years a lot of immigrants' rights places, but if you have your own version of things that you want to talk about, send them our way at majorityreporters@gmail.com. And then lastly, again, if there's anything that you don't understand that we keep referring to on this program, like why does Michael have a character, Nelson Mandela, as a right winger? Why did that happen? Or, what is this whole...
We don't know who Devin Nunes's phone was handed into. We don't know. The whole thing's a disgrace.
Or why is Waterboat? Why does that come up all the time with like some stoned voice? Send us in.
Book Arthur Miller did
and
in a boat. Sorry.
Send us an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com and write the word meme in the subject line, and we will put that on our meme list, which will be coming out shortly. And things move slow around here, folks. So just calm down, please, everyone.
Deliberate pace we keep.
Yes, exactly. Intentionality. Yes, exactly. That's the way we roll. So I'd like to welcome in studio Brandon Sutton. He is the host of The Discourse. Do you have anybody else on that show?
Oh, yes. I have two co-hosts who will remain nameless because I like to be a center of attention.
All right, there you go. So it's all about you. And,
no, their names are Adair and Richard, to be fair.
Okay, fair enough. That was pretty fair of you. And all right, so welcome to the show. And let's first start with this clip. Now, obviously, looking back on this week, we have there has been we had a big impeachment hearing. It's the third impeachment that we've had in this. You know what I wanted to get to before with that? I just want to talk about this before we get into the impeachment, because I don't want to forget this.
How fast really it's going.
As you know, the Nancy Pelosi has been hell-bent on trying to pass this USMCA, whatever, the U.S.-Mexico-Canadian agreement. This is basically the new NAFTA. It's not dramatically different from the old NAFTA. It supposedly is going to have more labor protections, particularly in Mexico. One of the things that's been slowing it down is that they've been killing trade unionists in Mexico, which seems to run contrary to the spirit of protecting labor. And so that has slowed the roll of this. And apparently, I think in a bid, in some way, to woo, I'm not sure who, I don't know how the whip count goes, Pelosi is now pushing to strip out what are referred to in the Wall Street Journal as sweeping legal protections for online content in the new trade pact with Mexico and Canada. This, as folks may know, if you are an internet company, but for Sesta Fosta, which recently put a slight, carve out in this, there are broad protections from liability from what happens on your websites, because a lot of it's user created content, and there's only so much liability that people should assume. This is slightly controversial, though, because it's a question of like how much of a responsibility do you have to police these things? If you're Facebook and Google, what happens is that sometimes this liability is just basically a way for you to save money and not have to actually hire real people to do any of this work. What's fascinating about this, though, to me, and I think this tells you what is so problematic of these type of so-called trade deals. Spokesman for Nancy Pelosi said there are concerns in the House about enshrining the increasingly controversial liability shield in our trade agreements, particularly at a time when Congress is considering whether changes need to be made in U.S. law. And the point here is that, and they don't say it explicitly, but this is what it's illustrating. These trade deals supersede the domestic, the ability for the countries that participate to have sovereignty essentially over their own laws that are not regulated by these trades. So in other words, if the United States wanted to strip this type of liability or change it in any way going forward, and they had signed this trade deal, which enshrined these liability protections, these companies could then sue the United States for any expenses that were incurred as a function of these of the United States deciding we want different protections for people online. Now, let's just, for the sake of argument, we can be agnostic as to whether the liability is appropriate or not. It illustrates this problem with these trade deals. And this applies to maybe we can't strengthen our union deals relative to our union laws relative to the trade deal. Maybe we can't strengthen consumer protections. Maybe certain antitrust. We don't know because it's not fully clear what's in this deal. But that is the dynamic that's problematic. This investor-state dispute resolution committees that sit on these. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, Brandon, but I just wanted to get that out of the way because it's just sitting right in front of me.
My only thought on it, you would think that this would be a problem for conservatives, right? You would think that people who are really interested in American sovereignty and borders and protecting the right of America to be the greatest country on the planet would feel threatened by the ability for foreign countries, for foreign nationals, for any sort of company that exists outside or is owned by a non-American to basically prevent America from looking after its citizens to the best of its ability or through democratic processes, right? So I think it really does poke holes in the argument that the main issue that they are concerned with is sovereignty, and it's more of a...
Yes, I think that's true. And I think that came up in the TPP. But of course, I think what we've also seen under Trump relative to any other closely held position that conservatives have had in this country for the past 25 years, they can go out the window in 5 minutes.
Can I just say really 30 seconds? 20-year anniversary of the Seattle protests last week. And one of the most infuriating, stupid things was seeing corporate trade advocates say, well, now we have what the Seattle protesters wanted. Because Trump is doing is saying instead of international institutions, let's basically have bilateral trade agreements that are potentially even worse in terms of corporate power. And the Seattle protests and the people who protest things like NAFTA are actually going back to the 90s, were highly globalized. And they were about creating a totally different set of environmental and labor conditions. So conflating those two things is highly wrong.
All right, let's check out this clip. Nancy Pelosi on Friday, and we'll play a clip from that later, announced, not Friday, yesterday, Thursday, announced that they will be introducing articles of impeachment on Monday, and we may cover this live. I'm not sure. There will be essentially the attorneys for all the committees will be arguing as to whether articles of impeachment should be introduced. I think that could be interesting. We'll see. But here is Doug Collins. He is the minority leader, the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee on the Republican side.
WASP, Rudy Giuliani.
And he is from Georgia. He's a little testy these days because he did not get appointed the interim senator to replace Johnny Isaacson's, who's resigning because of apparently health interests. And he's a little bit pissy about it because he's been doing all this work to impress Donald Trump. Donald Trump wanted Doug Collins, and that's not going to happen. And I would just note, it's going to be interesting to see if a vote in the Senate is going to put pressure on this new interim senator from Georgia. Because if they felt super confident that Georgia was a state that wanted to be closely hewed to Donald Trump, Doug Collins would be sitting in that seat come January. But here's Doug Collins answering what should be, for the Republicans, a pretty easy question to answer. Because Doug Collins kept saying that Donald Trump was concerned about corruption, and yet he never brought up the words corruption in any general sense in the phone call that Donald Trump released to prove that he was interested in corruption. Now, there's other things, of course. He's cut funding for anti-corruption efforts, and they never even wanted an actual investigation into Burisma or Biden or 2016. They just wanted an announcement about the investigation. But here's Doug Collins. Let's see if anybody can figure out what the hell he's talking about here.
Yes. You keep saying that the president was concerned about corruption, but in neither of those phone calls he mentioned the word corruption. Why didn't the president mention the word corruption and instead ask the Ukrainian president to investigate the Bidens?
Well, pause it for 1 second. Now, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just also keep in mind that these are the same people who say that if the words quid pro quo are not being used in the context of a bribe, then it's not a quid pro quo. However, the lack of the word corruption in a call that is ostensibly only about corruption, that's almost laughable, according to Collins.
Read between the lines.
Yes.
Why didn't the president mention the word corruption and instead ask the Ukrainian president to investigate the Bidens?
Well, that's almost like saying, why don't you frame your questions differently? He said this is what he wanted to look into. What? He said, help us as a country because we're trying to heal. We've had, as Mr. Jordan said earlier, and did a great job at it, we had just come off the Mueller hearing, which was most all of you covered and found to be a total disaster for the impeachment narrative that the Democrats have been saying. What we're simply saying here is that the issue was what happened on that call. And then there became all these stories from the whistleblowers about all these things that supposedly happened. And since then, fact witnesses and even hearsay evidence has said, no, that's not what happened. So my question, I go back to something. And everyone, if Mr. Nadler stands here, ask him this question. He said it almost 20 years ago, that we should never accept a report from another entity and just accept it and rubber stamp it. I have a question for Mr. Nadler. Is he just simply going to rubber stamp this to get to the two things that I've said, the clock and the calendar?
Thank you. I'll wave away, and then I'll ask another question.
Well, I just want to jump in here and say, as a minority, I disavow this man. He's not my leader. I don't accept this man. Although I did appreciate that he went just full. What's the giant chicken in Hanna-Barbera cartoons who has the sort of southern drawl, but speaks quite
Foghorn Leghorn.
They went full Foghorn Leghorn there for a second.
That's just stunning. He has no answer for that. Not even like a auction. Yeah, totally. There was a British comedian, Harry Enfield, who used to say like his whole routine, he would almost just look down on the ground and just race through it because he was afraid, he said. And so he figured he'd just get it over with. And there was no time for anybody to laugh as he was doing it.
It's going from.
But that is.
That's more. It's college It's going to the well too much. Total college presentation you didn't prepare for. Energy. They
don't need to do anything though, right? They don't really. When they give this to when they are presenting this to Fox News, they don't need to do anything more than that. They just need to sort of swat it away, and they know Fox News is not going to cover it. And that's...
Yeah, they need their body language to look right, and then just some words to come out, and then they'll be fine.
Of course. Yeah, it's all about the framing of the question.
Yeah. Which, frankly,
that's like saying he should have done something not wrong.
Lisa Page. Where's the whole Peter Straka? All right. Folks. I should tell you this right now. It's the holiday season, and folks apparently do a lot of online shopping around these times for gifts and whatnot. Hanukkah is falling at the same time as Christmas this year, so I'm actually shopping around this time. Usually, I'm not even worried about it because I've already done my Hanukkah thing, and then I just watch everybody else freak out about Christmas. But now, on top of that, we're being warned about e-skimming. Apparently, this is when cyber criminals watch online shopping carts in order to steal credit card and debit card information from websites and mobile apps. Other information captured, they'll get your names, they'll get your date of birth, they'll get your account numbers, they'll get your passwords, they'll get your location, your emails. Targeted businesses include retailers, ticket selling sites, travel-related companies, and more, all the things that we use during the holidays, and frankly, every day. Every time you bank, every time you shop online, you can be vulnerable to cyber criminals. Now, you've heard me talk about LifeLock. They're a pioneer in identity theft protection. Well, now Norton, which goes way back, they were one of the first in consumer cybersecurity. They've joined forces with LifeLock to help protect your cyber safety. A Norton 360 with LifeLock membership, it gives you all-in-one protection device. All-in-one protection. It gives you device security, identity theft protection, and a VPN for online privacy and more. If there's an identity theft problem, they have specialists who will work to fix it. No one can prevent all cybercrime and identity theft. No one can monitor all transactions at all businesses. But Norton 360 with LifeLock is a powerful ally for your cyber safety until December 8th. Folks, just over the weekend, sign up and get a special radio offer. You can save up to 40% off your first year by going to norton.com/majority. That's 40% off Norton 360 with LifeLock at norton.com/majority. Also, this is exciting. You've seen these, right, Brandon?
I have.
You've been in the studio before.
I just want to say, I didn't realize this was a political show. You're spreading globe Earth propaganda to your followers.
That's right. This is actually
Jesus Christ.
This is our.
This is woo.
This anti-flat
Can we
Earth.
wait before we read the ad? Can we just let's wait to set it up and say this is the most terrifying Juku meme I've ever seen.
Yeah, here we go. Exactly. Super globalist.
I don't know if this
here.
is helping us.
Super globalist. Support for today's show comes from Mova Globes. Mova Globes turn all on their own. Look at this. Look at that.
They're beautiful.
I love these things. I'm supposed to bring them home. They can sit on it or off a base. I've got two of the plexiglass ones over there. In any setting with ambient lighting. I've been told it's the light that does it that makes them move. Was somebody telling me, was that a lie?
I don't believe that.
I don't know about that.
They have hidden magnets which provide the movement, but I think someone told me it had something to do with the light, but I don't know if that's the case. But look at that. The one on the left is about to move on its own, I think.
It's a miracle. Magnets. How do they work?
Exactly. They have over 40 different designs, including world maps, outer space, famous artworks, something for everyone. The Outer Space Collection even features graphics provided by NASA and the Jet Propulsion Laboratories, complete with planets, moon, asteroids, constellation designs. It's a great gift for the person who has everything. The one I have in my hand, or at least one of them, is what the Earth looks like if you were in a space vehicle.
Debatable.
Well, I mean, from a distance.
Also, it is powered by ambient light. It says on the website, so.
That's nuts.
That's amazing.
And they got globes with Captain James Cook's. I think it's his travels, and so there's stuff that obviously wasn't charted yet, and so you have the old maps. You can get one with fine art. I mean, there's a whole host of things. They're a great gift for. Really, they cut across. This is what we call a 4-quadrant gift. You give this to your kids. You give it to your parents.
I know a lot of people who have those. I've seen one with the moon. They have the moon.
Yes, and they have Mars.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. People can check it out. Go to movaglobes.com/majority. Use the code majority. Get 15% off your first purchase, or any purchase maybe. This is the biggest deal of the year. It's only valid for a limited time. Hurry over to Mova. It's MOVA globes.com/majority. Use the code majority for 15% off your purchase. Cool gifts. Boom, you're done. You've done your Christmas shopping.
And everyone's happy.
The only other thing I can tell you, which I think is also a good Christmas gift, but for me, this is finding the site was a huge boon. for some reason, I have this problem. I don't know if other people have this problem, but I think all lamps are ugly. Like I can't picture lamps in the house.
Oh no,
ALAU.
It's hard. It's hard to find a good lamp. But obviously, lighting is super important.
Tiffany lights all the way.
Well, here's the thing: Lamps Plus has over 55,000 designs.
That's amazing.
On their website of lamps. There is no type of lamp.
For you.
There is no type of lamp. They have been helping customers love their everyday spaces for over 40 years with chandeliers, ceiling lights, table lamps, more. The light itself is like the jewelry for the home, they say. Lamps Plus is the nation's largest lighting retailer. Like I say, over 55,000 designs. They have top brands. They have their own exclusive designs in lighting, home furnishing, and decor. You don't have to guess at what the designs will look like or wander around the aisles of big box store or go to 1,500 different sites. Lamps Plus has videos with design tips. All the photos on the site tell you which light fixtures or furniture or pieces are featured, so it's easy to buy what you like. They have a large selection. Apparently, this is very popular. Minka Laveri. Have you heard of Laveri? It's lighting that will transform your home into wonderful living areas.
Matt was talking about this the other day.
Minka Laveri is known for designs that blend function and style using innovative materials. I like my lighting to be pretty straightforward. Oh wait, I just had I got a set of table lamps that have a USB plug in them.
There we go.
And it's
now
subtle.
We're speaking Sam's
now,
language.
exactly. I like my stuff to be functional. But these are also stylish. They're like minimalist. That's the kind of stuff I like.
Stylish USB 3.0.
Exactly. It really you wouldn't even know that the USB thing is there, but it's super convenient. I don't know what to tell you, folks. That's what I like. But they have all sorts of like.
I heard Sam on the phone with a woman once going, "I have a very Japanese aesthetic."
I did never say that. There's another one. They have like the touch table lamps.
That's awesome.
Where you touch the they're sort of like mid-century modern. Those are another couple of ones that I love.
I'm gonna be using this.
I have
site.
some stories about those.
Honestly,
no doubt. Yeah.
There's you will find what you like, and you won't have to go all over the place. 55,000 designs, and now you can get up to 50% off of hundreds of those lights, furniture, and decor between November 25th and December 24th. That is now. That's 50% off during the Lamps Plus holiday sale, November 25th through December 24th. Go to lampsplus.com/majority to start saving today. That's lampsplus.com/majority. All right, we will put links, of course, in the YouTube and in our podcast descriptions. So let's get to this. Let's just play this clip, Nancy Pelosi. I want to talk and Brandon get a little bit of your perspective on impeachment, how it's been going, what they've been doing. But here is Nancy Pelosi. Here's Nancy Pelosi going in on impeachment. This was yesterday yesterday morning.
Today, I am asking our chairman to proceed with articles of impeachment. I commend our committee chairs and our members for their somber approach to actions which I wish the president had not made necessary. In signing the Declaration of Independence, our founders invoked a firm reliance on divine providence. Democrats, too, are prayerful, and we will proceed in a manner worthy of our oath of office to support and defend the Constitution of the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic.
You know, the language gets a little bit colorful and silly in this.
Really?
And yeah. But the bottom line is, you know, they're all so nervous, and they are all, it's a historical event. And they know that history is going to look back upon this. And, she's competing against, I guess, really for modern times, against what's his face for I can't even Newt Gingrich, in terms of the way that she's going to be perceived, and so they go.
So she should go for it. She should go. We need to have laser beams with weapons to patrol neighborhoods to encourage black kids to learn. She should do a Gingrich impression.
The thing is, they're speeding this through. It seems to me to be and as much as Jonathan Turley would have us believe otherwise, we're still basically in the median between the fastest impeachment, that would be Johnson's, and the slowest, I guess, which was Bill Clinton's. One of the things that my understanding is about impeachment, however, is that Donald Trump, once he's out of office, will not be able to be pardoned for anything he's been impeached for, even if he doesn't get convicted in the Senate. Which is an interesting twist on this. So I wonder if they're going to be bringing up a lot of obstruction charges and stuff related to the Mueller reports. But Brandon, what's your take on impeachment?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think Trump should be impeached, right? I think that goes without saying. The arguments I've heard against impeachment really sort of rely on Trump's ability and the Republicans' ability to weaponize essentially the complex victimology of the Republican Party in their base, right? So the fear is that if you go after Trump with impeachment, he's going to be able to organize and mobilize his supporters to go, oh, you see, this is the world's slowest lynching. This is the world's slowest crucifixion of me, an innocent. Well, certainly not innocent, right? But just somebody who's playing the game by the rules that have been established, right? So his ability to reference other people's corruptions, either soft or hard, whether that makes a difference to the voters is debatable. But from my perspective, the benefits outweigh the cost, right? I will congratulate, I guess, the Democrats, because if we were prior to impeachment, my fear was that the entire primary was going to be about impeachment. It was going to be about the various reasons we should impeach Donald Trump. And I think they've actually managed to have real discussions about real issues and not just focus on Ukraine or Mueller or Barr. They've trend towards that sometimes, but it kind of fell into the backdrop, which is good. And just from a practical standpoint, maybe this is me being a little bit idealistic, I think she seems low energy. I think Nancy Pelosi, not to put words in her mouth, kind of knows it's not going to go anywhere. They might not be able to impeach him, but if that is,
they'll be able to impeach him, but not convict him,
yes.
Right?
They might not be able to convict him, right? But it might hurt his chances of presidency. It might mobilize the Democratic Party base. And from my perspective, as someone who's to the further left the Democratic Party, if they fail to do it, if they fail to hold Trump accountable for his many, many obvious crimes, no one has been more deserving of impeachment than Donald Trump, right? It reveals that the system is unable to hold anyone accountable. It reveals that we can't impeach anybody. And I think that lesson, if people are able to internalize that accountability is not just being reserved for extreme cases like a Donald Trump, who everyone presents as an extreme case, that it's just not possible, then maybe people will be able to internalize that we have to have an actual change to that system, right? That culture of unaccountability that is broadly just infecting our political system.
Right. I mean, I think there's a big argument that you want to expand the articles of impeachment because articles of impeachment because of that very point that, like, you need to set down a marker. Like, I mean, if the emoluments, we're not going to hold him on issues of emoluments, then what are we basically saying to future presidents?
My guess would be, well, I could say for certainty, speaking for myself, because that's obviously the only person I can speak clearly for. If he was getting impeached on concentration camps, number one, and emoluments, number two, I would talk about it 99% more than I do in this scenario, right. Even as someone who supports the process. Right. But I would feel that this is an absolute obligation.
Right. I think that's true.
No, I agree. And I think, the reason it's hard for me to become super excited about the impeachment proceeding is because it has become a very kind of esoteric, weaving around certain topics, right? I think that there's a layer to that, right? There's a layer of like, okay, well, we have to find a thing to impeach Trump for that does not implicate people we don't want to implicate, right? We have to find reasons, we have to be able to weave around our allies to find a crime that Trump is guilty of. And he's guilty of many crimes by his own admission, right? You can go through his long history in real estate, his long history in finance, He's guilty of many crimes. But we have to find something he's guilty of that won't also implicate or set a bad precedent for future presidents. And then there's the second layer of, okay, but even if we find that thing, have we constructed a system? Has the Republican Party gone so far right? Have we become so divorced from our ability to engage in a bipartisan agreement of what that would look like that even if we find something that he and only he is guilty of, can we still do it?
Right.
Yeah, and even the thing that they found still makes the Bidens look a little bit guilty and corrupt, even though they didn't commit any crimes.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that's true as well.
Just to add, I just want to piggyback off just for a second, because I think the bipartisan consensus that still exists that is incredibly dangerous would be like setting literally everything else aside about the whole Russia argument. But we've talked about this many times, that if you had a sprawling investigation of how sovereign wealth and just say energy money from anywhere flows in Washington, no one in Washington besides Bernie Sanders and Ilhan Omar or AOC would want that investigation. I mean, that the type of implications of money sloshing around in our political process and influencing not just politicians but think tanks and agencies and businesses. I mean, Trump is the very tip of the iceberg.
I mean, just to jump off that point just real quick, I think that when you're sitting from their standpoint, from the Democratic Party's standpoint, from some of the more entrenched liberal media, for lack of a better term, standpoint, the proximity between yourself and Trump in terms of corruption seems so wide because that's the only gap you can really notice. It's like, okay, well, there's the soft corruption of, of Hunter Biden doing whatever. Then there's the soft corruption of money flowing hands and unregistered lobbyists, which is just everyday normalized thing. Then there's Trump is doing like real crimes, and that you expect, because that's your world, for everyone outside that world to also be obsessed with that distance between you two, between, hey, Nancy Pelosi, Democratic Party, but I would argue that from where we're standing, from the normal person standpoint, their proximity is much closer,
right,
than ours is to them.
Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump has this sort of almost like old-timey level of corruption, where it's like literally what they were worried about in the late 1700s. It's like, what if he has some property in France and he makes a deal to?
He's absconding with giant bags with dollar signs written on them.
I think what you're saying is correct. The irony, of course, is that Nancy Pelosi is almost more on, maybe not for the same reasons, but was one of the most reluctant people involved in the entire Democratic Party to have impeachment. And I think largely there may be some sort of like squaring to that circle. Like, it's really bad and the American people can decide. I agree with you. From the standpoint of the average citizen, I think particularly this narrow aspect of impeachment, I think, really looks like you buried the lead here in terms of where the corruption is within the context of Washington. But my sense is that few people are paying attention to the specifics. I mean, a decent amount. But more broadly, it's the idea that he's getting impeached. And I've said this until I'm blue in the face. There are half a dozen senators who want to distance themselves from Donald Trump when it comes to their reelection in 2020. And when they take this vote, it is going to be very hard to do, because they're going to end up voting, and these articles of impeachment are going to be abuse of power. And the abuse of power sort of like is a broad stroke that can be applied to a lot of different things. It just happens to be in this one instance. And I think that's going to be a difficult vote for some of those people to take.
Well, I mean, I would just agree with you. I think, it's easy for me to be, and, I don't like Nancy Pelosi. We don't have similar politics. She does things I don't agree with. Her efficacy is not in the fields that I agree with, right? But I don't think she's stupid. In fact, I think that she is one of the most self-reflective people engaged in the impeachment process, because she knows the things that we know. And you have a lot of people within that world who have normalized their own corruption to the point which they don't even conceptualize the idea, hey, people outside this world, they're not, when you mention Ukraine, they're going to go, oh, well, what about Biden?
Right.
You have just different layers of people who are like the people who are super focused on it. Then you have like this layer of like the legally and politically semi-erudite who are kind of paying attention. And then you have like everyone else who's like a casual listener, like, oh, they're impeaching Trump. Like finally. And I mean, if you ask someone on the street why they're impeaching Trump, they would just probably give you a number of reasons. They would give you Russia or his, or the concentration camps we have at the border or the racism. They would just name off things, but it's the symbolism of the impeachment. But I think it's in Nancy Pelosi's vested interest as the leader of the Democratic Party establishment to essentially say, like, we don't want there to be this kind of larger litigation about our ability as a party to hold the Republicans accountable even when it matters. Like this idea of like, how long can we keep up this grift of accountability can exist, right? We chose not to do it in the past, but one day if things get bad enough, we can do it. And if they go through impeachment, that's going to come up, right? It's going to come up with, well, if you can't impeach Trump, what can you really do? Like,
right. I mean, I think the lack of accountability for the Republican Party is a broad societal problem, even beyond, and maybe it's because you have people like Joe Biden going out there. It's like, as soon as Donald Trump is gone, these guys are going to be back on board with the whole sort of like, I mean, no one believes that. And but I think the press, I had a story at the beginning of the week of like, the Republicans' response to impeachment is the final nail in the coffin for the Trumpification of the Republican Party. And they have it backwards. Donald Trump was not dropped from the heavens by aliens who were saying, we're going to impose our chosen candidate on the Republican Party. They built this, and he just showed up because he was the right size for the suit, and that was it.
Exactly. I mean, I think you have people who really, really on all sides, both the Democratic and Republican side, who have an interest in just placing Trump in this ideological and historical bubble. Like they want to pretend like there's no precursor to Trump, like he came out of nowhere, and that there's no modern context for him either. Forget the whole geopolitical context of the rise of neo-fascism and the rise of strongman leaders in Europe and and in Southeast Asia and in Asia, but just in America, the long history of fascist leaders and authoritarianism, and just the idea that we never really reflected on what are contributing factors to the rise of these movements that actually, I kind of like Pete off there, but we haven't really reflected on what our system is doing that appeals to these people. Right. You can even talk about the Stephen Miller situation, which I brought up on my own show recently, The Discourse.
Subscribe to it on Patreon.
Subscribe to it on Patreon at expanddiscourse.com. No,
I am a patron of it.
You should. Everyone should be a patron of it. I won't eat weird things like Michael does, but I have a diet to maintain. But
that was the last one.
You say that, but in reality, it feels as though you're like the Stephen Miller situation. Like when it came out that he was an avowed, explicit white nationalist, someone like Steve Bannon who was in conversation with the ideology of white nationalism, people rushed to talk about whether they were shocked or not shocked. When I felt like and some people were engaged in that conversation, but then some people were like, hey, the fact that Stephen Miller is an avowed white nationalist and that we have a Muslim ban and that we have 700,000 people in camps at the border, that's not a coincidence, right? Of course, but it's not a coincidence, but like the implication there is it's not a direct causal relationship either. It's like there's an intermediate variable there that he was able to get into government. He was able to fill this role because we already had the infrastructure built that was so appealing. He
was working for Jeff Sessions.
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't like this guy was pulled off.
He also had ICE and he had the Department of Homeland Security.
Right, but I'm saying
he had the Patriot Act.
Right.
Yeah. All of it.
Well, it's interesting that you say that nobody wants to think about or take a look at the conditions that gave rise to Trump, because I have heard a number of the Democratic primary candidates mouthing that and paying lip service to it lately. I feel like even Amy Klobuchar might have said it at one point in time, but then the reasons they give just betray their utter ignorance and shallowness of their understanding of this stuff. And in a way, it inoculates them from having to take a real look at it.
Buttigieg does that stuff all the time where he will faint at what needs to be done. Like Trump is a symptom, he'll say things like that, and then
because and
then he'll say the cause is of course the deficit.
Well, and I think but it's become the thinking person's thing to say in the last several months. Now that's like the new. But I think it's an interesting distinction though to draw. Like I watched more of the Hillary Clinton interview on Howard Stern, and I won't belabor what I said yesterday, but she told a story she confirmed a story that's already been floating around, which is that she was sitting next to George W. Bush during the inauguration speech where Trump talked about carnage.
This is some weird,
and Bush looked at her and went, "That's some weird shit." And and it's so, but even me, I completely understand why people find that story so comforting and appealing. And I think that there is, like, when you think about people like Joe Biden and still so many people in Washington, it's like, yes, partially they're delusional about the extremism of Republicans and the depths they're willing to go. There's no doubt. But on the other hand, I have no doubt that there's still tens of thousands of private conversations going on where it's like, we get that this guy's a little bit uncouth. If he goes, we will chill out a little bit on the rhetoric. And guess what we can do then? Cut Medicare, Social Security, and get back to doling out consulting contracts.
Right.
I think that corrupt bipartisan consensus still totally exists, even in the context with the rise. It's like there's three. There's Republicans as an authoritarian party, the bipartisan corruption axis, and then with Sanders and the squad, some actual sharpening ideological.
Let me just add to what Hillary Clinton could have said that would have sort of illuminated this. Her lack of saying it illuminates this problem.
Right.
He says that's some weird shit. And she looks at him and goes, let's hope he doesn't cause the death of 1 million people for a war of choice that we legalize the country into.
Well, part of the reason she can't say that is because she voted for it.
Well, exactly.
And her husband,
she could have whispered it. She could have whispered it, and he could have said, like, but you voted for it. Well, I did, but it was,
Her husband went to the UK
I understand.
and said, you guys should listen to Tony Blair.
But my point being, that is the response that would be given if they weren't like, look, that was just rhetoric. It's the stuff that he does that we should really judge him on. All bad, but let's be honest, George. You immiserated 1 million.
But we all know in the Clinton-Bush game, all they care about is the rhetoric, and then they get to the consulting contracts.
I mean, just to touch on Biden's delusional mentality about being able to cross aisles with the Republicans and work with them towards a better future or whatever. I mean, the question for him whenever he says that should be, well, what do you know that Obama doesn't? Right? That should be the question.
Yes.
Because frankly, it's like
I can't tell you how many times I have asked people working with candidates to ask him about that question, reporters to ask that question. Yes.
He knows how to be white.
I mean, yeah, but to admit that is to admit that that you feel like we have to break bread with people who are so virulently racist that they could not work with the first black president. So you can't really say that. But any candidate who expresses, within the party, of the Democratic Party, which still fetishizes Obama, they still fetishize him as the great communicator, like they're probably best president in the past 30, 40 years, right? That for all his faults, regardless of why he did it, he bent over backwards to commiserate with Republicans. He bent over backwards to find common ground. He was willing to do whatever they wanted.
Cut Social Security.
And they refused to do it. So for a party that is so concerned with finding the next Obama, right? The question for everyone who's talking about this bipartisan appeal they can sort of manage or cobble together once Trump is out of office, they should be forced to say, okay, well, what makes you better than Obama?
Exactly.
Like what do you know that Obama does not know?
From that perspective, Sanders treats Biden the most respectfully.
Especially Joe Biden.
Specifically Joe Biden, because he's the one who's been making this claim, he was there. Like, you and him couldn't do this before, and you walked across the, Pennsylvania Avenue to give Mitch McConnell whatever he wanted when it came time for the fiscal cliff. I mean, you still weren't able to do it. Let's play this. I know Michael played it yesterday. I wanted to play a clip of Michael talking about how great of an ad it is, because this ad is not good.
Are you serious?
Yes,
Jesus,
but we didn't have.
Wow.
No,
the first half of the ad is objectively good.
I think the ad is bad, and I will tell you why. Now, I think it's.
Okay.
I think it's.
Well, let me do this for you. I think the ad is good. Pause it.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
The reason why this ad is bad is basically something that Brandon had said before, which was that the Republican Party is completely and wholly built around aggrievement. And this ad, I think Donald Trump could take this ad and with just a couple of different tweaks, use it for himself.
Bad general election ad, great Democratic primary ad.
Very possibly.
Oh, yeah.
Very possibly.
And we are currently in the primary.
I think what I said actually is that if you, I think in the general, if you cut the second half of this out and just made it about him looking like a boob, that maybe because they respond to like being emasculated, but the violin part, not good general election.
The Republicans don't care about what Europeans think, and they certainly
actually it even goes further than that.
Canadians,
they are almost knee jerk.
Yeah,
their response is the opposite.
This is like Trump dunking on them, basically.
Right.
I mean, they like that. I mean, if you look at
it looks like a cuck though.
That's the good part about it. Like, it definitely
looks like a cuck.
It will make Trump upset.
Yes, that's the point.
But that doesn't necessarily translate to like electoral failure.
Believe me, Democratic primary voters.
I think there's some truth to that. I think that it's possible that, and I think frankly there's people who are saying the same thing about Biden going after that guy yesterday.
Oh, I said the same thing.
People like Joe Biden because they think he's a tough guy and he's going to bully the bully. He's going to beat up Trump.
Oh, I think the guy yesterday works well in the general election. I do. I do.
On the aggrievement tip, like Trump is going to do that no matter what. Like, it doesn't matter how much or how little ammunition the Democrats give him. If Kathy Griffin does a mean tweet about him, he's going to act like he's being crucified.
Well, yeah, that's my point, is that they need at least just some, this just feeds in that, just becomes chum for that aggrievement.
Like, they've got no shortage of chum, though. It's not like they were waiting for it to come along when this ad was made.
It's better, dude, you look like an idiot as a play versus how dare you, sir.
I personally think that for the general election, the key is you need to motivate a marginal part of your base to get them to come out, and you need to depress as much of the other side as you can. And the one thing I think that is going to depress the other side is, frankly, attacking the Republican Party. Because if the Republican Party is attacked as Donald Trump just wasn't up to the task because the Republicans are so bad, they never gave the health care that they promised. They never got rid of the Affordable Care Act. They never built the wall that they said they were going to do. And the idea being that, like, it's useless, Trump voters, and even your superhero couldn't get the Republican Party to do anything, so why bother? I think is the only tack to take with them. This stuff, it really is just, this is just to get the MSNBC viewers out to vote for Biden. Yep.
World leaders caught on camera laughing about President Trump. Several world leaders.
Hell, that French guy.
Trump.
They're laughing at
Look at
him.
there from Europe.
Administration has accomplished more than almost any administration in the history of our country.
They added that laughter. They added that laughter.
That's mocking and ridiculing him for being completely off balance.
Allies are deeply worried about him. They say he's becoming increasingly isolated. Something is very
for me, look how mean they're being to him.
For me, it's good because I know he saw it. I know Trump watched it. I know it upset him personally.
Yes,
of course. It's always funny to hurt Trump's feelings.
I like how they have his face pockmarked in that last clip.
But to be really clear,
they're showing like some pockmarks on his face.
Part violin, not general election material.
Well, of course,
but your MSNBC material.
Well, but that's the thing. It's like people are going like Wolf Blitzer, Brian Williams. Help! F those guys.
Brian Stelter said something bad about Trump.
Right, exactly.
Well, what they're trying to do here and what they need to do, I think, is to unite the traditional base of the Democratic Party that votes in a primary, which includes both kind of urbane, white, professional, managerial liberals and Black voters in the South. And I mean, I'm not a total wonk on this, but as far as I understand it, those two segments of the base have not united behind a single candidate yet, which might create an opening for a candidate like Bernie to come in and win.
Well, I will say, if you want to unite black voters behind you, maybe appearing with the person multiple times. Like this video ad really centers Justin Trudeau, who, maybe like cool it with that one for a few months. Like, I found it funny. Like, I found it a little funny, but it's just not.
I almost forgot about that.
How? I mean,
this ad is Jack Ryan meets Rachel Maddow. Like, this is a good Democratic primary
and I'd
ad.
be delighted to sit down and compare my IQ to yours if you'd like, Frank.
I just don't see
You're gonna get to that.
these like smarty pants PMC liberals uniting behind someone who's so obviously embarrassing.
That Joe Biden is embarrassing?
Yeah. His brain is melting in real time. And he sniffs the hair like the Hillary people don't like him.
Jody Biden.
The finger suck was weird.
The finger suck was fine.
That was the least weird thing. I'd give that one a pass.
Yeah, I would say.
I just saw the image. I didn't see the video.
Here is, a lot of people are arguing that Joe Biden is getting testy as a function of his old age.
Trump and Biden have the questions in the bottom of Jell-O cups.
Here is Biden at in 88 when he's running, and I mean, on some level, there is an argument, I guess. How do you beat Donald Trump? You get another guy who's like Donald Trump. And this is like sort of the most Trumpish clip of Joe Biden. He's a little more adept, although, to be fair, this was also 30 some odd years ago. So, he may be a little bit sharper then.
He is self-made.
I definitely want some of those vitamins where your hair gets thicker 30 years later than it was at the time, but that's we'll put that aside. But here he is. He is up in I think this is up in New Hampshire.
This is New Hampshire.
And he is part of the 1988 Democratic tour. I remember watching C-SPAN back then, actually, during this.
Did you watch this photos?
I don't know if I watched this when it happened, but I remember Songus when he went swimming. And,
that's 92.
Was that 92? Oh, okay, then I guess it wasn't 88.
Who did you back in 88? Please say Jesse Jackson. Just pretend.
I honestly don't even remember 88 now.
Okay.
Good.
Question. What law school did you attend, and where did you place in that class? And the other question is, could you quickly, I think
I probably have a much higher IQ than you do, I suspect. I went to law school on a full academic scholarship.
Pause it for 1 second. Now,
an asshole.
Well, understand, the question was asked because people were still talking about how Ronald Reagan had no standing to be president at that time. Go ahead.
Quickly, I think
I probably have a much higher IQ than you do, I suspect. I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship. In the first year in law school, I decided I didn't want to be in law school and ended up in the bottom 2/3 of my class, and then decided I wanted to stay, went back to law school, and in fact ended up in the top half of my class. I won the International Moot Court competition. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only need 123 credits, and I'd be delighted to sit down and compare my IQ to yours if you'd like, Frank.
I can say one thing. I think just in my own opinion, I'm not questioning your IQ at all. I'm just saying that with the people...
Pause it for 1 second. Now, in 1988, Biden was in his 40s, I guess. Late 40s would be my guess, right?
Really an unfortunate
line. I got to tell you, it's more or less my age. The idea that I can remember how many credits I had in college at this point.
I don't know, man. I've seen you, Sam. I don't know. One time Sam was on the phone with Dane. He was just like, I would suspect I have a higher IQ than you. I have 365 credits.
This is somebody who is like... The fact that rolled off his tongue so quickly is very weird to me, I think.
Well, I think it's made up, but this is in the context of...
You mean that you think that was set up?
I don't think... No. I don't think Biden...
He has it rehearsed because it's a lie.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Fabrications.
But I do think that in What It Takes about 88 campaign, I mean, they said that Biden had, even though he became a senator when he was 30, was basically... had a lot of embarrassment because he's a Delaware and Syracuse grad and not an Ivy Leaguer. And
both of the people involved in that are pretty revolting.
I mean, the questioner is a total schmuck.
A-hole, yeah.
Total schmuck.
I don't know. I think they should circulate that ad to all the PMC liberals who like Warren and Buttigieg right now. Maybe they would throw some support to Biden.
Here is Biden responding to a climate activist.
Another one?
This is, I don't know if, did we play this one?
No,
this is another one.
This is another one.
There are so many of these.
And it is unbelievable. What I think is problematic, and it's going to be interesting to see if this narrative holds. In some respects, Biden comes off as a tough guy yesterday. In other respects, there is still the narrative that Joe Biden can't address difficult, even remotely difficult questions. In fact, it doesn't appear that he can answer any questions. And if the idea that he can't respond to anything that is even like vaguely challenging, like this stuff is obvious. That the Hunter Biden question is about as obvious a question as you would expect to get. Like,
it's gonna come up.
The day this thing broke, there should have been 12 people around a table, and they should have gone through every single sentence and word that he was going to say and respond to this at every stop, at every time.
Did.
I don't know if they did. I don't know if they did. I think he's too arrogant, actually, and he thinks like, I got it. And here's another example of this. Watch this.
I'm Aaron. And what I'm wondering is, how can young folks trust that you're going to fight for us on climate change when your climate advisor, your hand-picked climate advisor, served on the board of a fossil fuel company?
That is not the person who's doing my advising. And by the way, yeah, Heather worked for us in the administration.
Yeah, no, I know.
Okay?
But she
look at my record.
Yeah.
Look at my record. Just look at the record.
I have Vice President Biden.
Well, I tell you what, if you look at my record and you still doubt about my commitment, then you should vote for somebody else.
I've looked at your climate plan. Why doesn't it ban fracking?
Well, why doesn't it ban fracking? Because you can't ban fracking right now. You got to transition away from it. Look, you're going to ban fracking all across America right now, right?
I would love to.
Yeah, I'd love to too. I'd love to make sure we can't use any oil or gas, period, now. Is it possible?
Yes.
Well, you ought to vote for somebody else.
There you go.
I like the strategy. I want to see how it plays out.
Yeah, exactly.
Long term.
How many times can I say that to somebody?
He's going to say it to every American.
Yeah.
He's kind of trying the Trump thing on Democrats right now. Because, like, they love to be topped by Trump. He's their daddy. He's the only one who can get away with insulting his own base. Biden, I don't know if that's going to work on Democratic primary voters.
I don't want anybody to grab me by the shoulders like that ever in my life.
Super creepy.
It's a little weird, but from my perspective, it looks like Biden has an underlying personality flaw of being incredibly insecure and getting incredibly aggressive when he's confronted, which goes back to the 80s, obviously, which is now being exacerbated by, senescence, essentially, right? So, like, he's getting frustrated when asked questions and going towards his normal behavior, like, I'm going to be very aggressive, but, like, it's just not there anymore. Like, it's hard to watch sometimes, actually. It's a little bit sad.
That is how men traditionally behave, though, when confronted. Like, that's a component of, like, classic masculinity that may not read as negative to a lot of people.
I think there's a possibility with that as well, frankly. All right, well, look, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to David Feldman. Brandon, if you would stick around, and we're going to have some laughs with David. Hopefully, maybe, or maybe it'll just be disturbing. Sometimes it is when we talk to him. We'll go through some of these other clips. All right, quick break. Be right back. David Feldman. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Folks, I just have to read this, and it's apropos for what during the break, I call into our caller, our guest, and literally as soon as I picked up the phone, I just got an earful, and he's not going to be too happy about this either. We played this clip of Joe Biden earlier. And maybe we can cut this on to the clip when we clip it, because we played this clip of Joe Biden earlier where he was talking about his 3 degrees. And I didn't understand any of that. I don't understand how you get 3 Bachelor of Arts degrees simultaneously. I thought it's just your major or whatever it is. And he did all this dancing around about what he did in law school. Well, this piece from September 22nd, 1987 by James Dickinson in the Washington Post. Joe Biden admitted yesterday that some of his boasts about his college academic achievements were untrue, including the claim that he had finished in the top half of his class at law school. And this was out of that exchange. That's very unfortunate. The guy also lied. But with that said, and like I said, I got a big earful from our next guest about what we were doing wrong, apparently, on this show. David Feldman. David, welcome to the program.
Hello. Hi. I'm always glad to be back. Just a little surprised by the tenor of your show today, Sam.
Yeah.
A little surprised.
You mentioned that. Now, do you want to be more specific?
Well, 100 million people stay home on Election Day, right?
Right.
You know that? Yeah. And I'm not trying to be critical of you, but it's this lack of civility. They're not coming to vote because of shows like yours where you team up on good people. I don't agree with Joe Biden. I'm like David Brooks. I'm a socialist from way back. Did you read David Brooks? Did you read David Brooks today? He used to be a socialist. And that means you have bona fides you should be listened to. And I'm an old lefty. Yeah. I'm an old lefty, Sam.
Yeah.
You know that.
I know that.
But you're not going to win beating up on good people like Joe Biden. He's a good man. I have problems with him. In principle, I want Bernie. You know that.
Right. In principle. But are you suggesting there's a difference between your principle and your here he is, David Brooks. We have a picture of him up there as a social democrat back in the day.
Republicans can have him.
And what do you mean by in principle? What do you mean in principle?
In principle, we need to listen to the adults and have a civil conversation and not attack Joe Biden because sometimes he tells the truth and sometimes he doesn't. The Democrats, this is a party, we're a big tent, Sam. There should be room for facts and lies. And to go after, you don't win that way. There should be room for somebody who had no hair and then suddenly has hair. There should be room for a candidate who, when his teeth got brown, he, like Biden did, he sent his brown teeth off to prison because they were super predators, and he got them capped and made them nice and white because he didn't want brown super predator teeth. And there's room for everybody in our party. And you just sit there, and we're not going to win. We don't win this way. Like the way you treat. It was heartbreaking to see Kamala Harris have to walk away. She could have won. She could have won the nomination and beat Trump. But the Bernie, they destroyed her.
But wait, she could have won.
I still think she can win. Yeah, I still think she can win.
But how could she win if there was no support for her?
There is support for her. Ask all my friends who know something, who know politics and policy. We know she could win. She could win the nomination. But she just couldn't take. She had it with the Bernie Bros.
So wait, so you're saying she just was just sick of it? She was sick of it and just was. So she walked away. It wasn't that other people walked away from her.
No, we lost a good candidate because the way Bernie treated her during the debates, with outperforming her, the way he outperformed her. That's not how you win alliances, by outperforming your opponents in debates. That's not how you bring the party together and hold them accountable for their policy on Medicare for all. She was for putting the insurance companies out of business, and then she's not. That's good. That's how you win in the general. We lost her. We lost her.
No, but what is your theory on how she can still win? That's what I'm curious about. Now that she's not a candidate.
Am I saying this with authority and a timbre in my voice?
Yeah.
She can win. Everybody knows that. See how loud? When I say this loudly and categorically?
Right.
How can you argue with this? It's a fact. The Democrats are centrists. Do you hear how loudly I'm saying this? That makes it a fact. And Kamala can win. But don't get me wrong. I love Bernie in principle. I'm an old lefty like David Brooks. I want all the things you want. But, the way you mock Mayor Pete.
Right.
Well, let me. It does not help it doesn't help the party.
All right, David. Since you brought up Mayor Pete, and I want you.
I sense racism. I have to say that because Mayor Pete is an African American.
No, Mayor Pete is not an African American.
I sense racism. You have that white privilege, and you don't see how important it is for young gay girls who are transitioning to see Mayor Pete and say, you know what? I can be our first African American president. You don't understand. You don't understand the importance of that.
Look, David, let's play a clip of.
You know what? I'm going to say something. I don't mean to play the Jew card with you, Sam.
Yeah.
But you don't know what it means to be afraid.
Well,
you have to.
I'm
you
Jewish.
don't know what fear means.
No,
and that is how you appeal to the Democrats by preying on their fears.
Now wait a second.
You got to vote your fears.
Now wait a second. How can you play the Jew card on me? I'm Jewish.
Yeah, I don't think you've ever known what it's like to be alienated and isolated. You don't understand identity politics. You mock it. That's why I know you want Bernie, and so do I. Believe me, I want everything Bernie wants. I just don't think we can get there right now.
When do you think we can get there?
I want everything he wants. I want everything he wants.
Okay.
Everything.
All right. Well, look.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about this clip, David Feldman. You've sit here. You have criticized us about for.
And don't get me wrong. I have a lot of respect.
Okay.
For the work you're doing.
I appreciate that, but you've criticized.
I just think you're. No, I'm not criticizing you. I think you need a bigger tent.
Okay, you're suggesting that we are too narrow in our perspective because we have been, attacking Mayor Pete. Here is a clip from Mayor Pete where he is once again using a right-wing frame, and frankly, not only using a right-wing frame, he is using the right-wing tactics of completely lying about the reality or just doesn't know it. Here is this.
Why should they be responsible for my debt?
It's a great question. Like climate, fiscal policy can be a question of intergenerational justice. And I know that my party's not known for worrying about deficits and the debt too much, but it's time for us to start getting into that business. Because what we've seen in Washington is that the party that talked a lot about the deficit when they were trying to kill off programs, when it came time for this corporate tax cut, turns out they don't care. There is $1 trillion deficit now, and created under a Republican administration, which means if my party doesn't start getting interested in deficits and debt, nobody will. And I view it the same way you do, as a generational question, because I think we may not have to wait for kids and grandkids to see when those fiscal time bombs start to go off.
Okay. Now, David, I know that you think that we're...
Hang on. The tingle down my thigh is subsiding. That was amazing. Go ahead, I'm sorry. Wow.
So you were really...
How is it possible that the youngest guy running is the adult in the room?
Well,
how is that possible?
The reality is that if you compare every president that we've had in modern times, you will find that the debt skyrockets under Republicans and then drops under Democrats. Unless like the inciting event happens the day before Barack Obama comes into office, and that grows, and then it starts to come down until the Republicans come to town. I mean, so here he is, putting aside the fact that he's just reciting Pete Peterson's mantra, the Nixon Commerce Secretary billionaire who went on to basically wants to cut Social Security and Medicare by creating this sort of debt hysteria. He also talks about these ticking time bombs, which he must be talking about, I guess, Medicare and Social Security, because that is consistent with the right-wing talking points. And the fact that the reality, if you did care about something like that, is that his party has been far better on that accord than the Republicans, to the extent that, and I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that it's even relevant, but everything he's saying is a load of I'm sorry, is a lie.
Malarkey.
Oh my God. I mean, this is why 100 million people stay home on election day. First of all, it's refreshing and different to hear a Democrat for the first time talking about fiscal responsibility. This is the first time I've ever heard the big spending party. This is new, something new, and you need to get used to that. Now, here's the other thing I don't mean to.
Didn't Bill Clinton run on that exact same thing? We're going to make government meaner and leaner.
I don't want to split the party and attack the Clintons. This is not. We need the Clintons, so I'm not going to do that. This is typical Bernie, bro. This is your problem. And I don't mean to attack you personally, because this is not what I do, but I sense your white privilege. I do. And I'll tell you why. The Republicans, historically, as you just pointed out, they balloon the debt and the deficit. They go on a spending spree. They cut taxes for the wealthy, and they create a mess. And who steps in and cleans up the mess traditionally? The Democrats. And you, perched in your ivory tower, think you're too good to clean up after people. Well, I've got news for you. If you want to appeal to the 99%, a lot of those people make money cleaning up. These are janitors and maids and housekeepers, and you're an elitist. You're saying we're too good to clean up the mess that the Republicans left us. That's not how you win in November, Sam. I'm sorry. You're mocking people who clean up messes for a living. But I want to vote for the president who appeals to the guys and gals, the folks, who when they come home from work have to take a shower. That's who I respect. Do you take a shower when you come home from work? I do.
I don't doubt that. So you're saying I'm part of? You're saying I'm part of the type of workers who shower before I go to work instead of after I go to work.
No, I'm saying you don't shower enough is what I'm saying. I'm saying Bernie supporters need to shower more. And I know we're going to wrap it up because I'm winning the argument. I'm winning this argument once again.
Well, I didn't think of it as an argument. I thought we were engaging in a conversation.
No, I win. See, that's the thing with you people. You don't know how to win. A conversation, you got to win.
Right. Okay. So go ahead.
We're coming up on today, actually, the Japanese. We're coming up on, I think it's the 30th anniversary of the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. And, you know, I'm an old lefty from way back, right? You know that, right? Roosevelt, Democrat, okay? And he went before the American people on television the day after the Koreans, the Japanese attacked us, and Franklin Roosevelt said yesterday, December 6th, a day that will live in infamy. And what did he say? He says, we're going to go to war with the Japanese. I have a plan, and I know how to pay for it. That was the genius of Teddy Roosevelt. He said, I mean, go back and watch Franklin Roosevelt's speech. Total focus. He says, we're going to fight the Nazis, the Japan. We're leaning in, because that's important to lean in, because we know our worth. And we're saying, you cannot attack us. And then he said to the American people, join me on this rendezvous with destiny, but you have a choice. You have a choice. I'm presenting to you in this speech a public option to fight the Nazis. You can choose to stay home and fight the Nazis in the private sector. And you know what? Because, and this is what you don't understand about Elizabeth Warren, what Roosevelt did is he presented the American people with a choice. They could choose the public option and fight with our army, or they can stay home and fight the Nazis, you know, in the private sector by, you know, no longer investing in Harriman Brothers and, you know, Ford and Coca-Cola and IBM, the people who were doing business with the Nazis. You could, you know, that's one way to fight the Nazis.
Right.
But when we saw how well the war was going, I know your father may be too young, but a lot of Americans opted in for the public option and said, you know what, I'm going to go. I'm going to go fight the Nazis. Right? I'm sorry?
2 years. Well, first there was Roosevelt said there's a public option, and then in no later than 2 years into my next term, I will present the second phase of the war option.
Yes. Is this Michael Brooks?
Yes, I'm helping you out.
I'm surprised you know something that happened before 1996. And do you know why? Let me ask you a question, because I don't always like your politics. I think you're a little brazen. Do you know why D-Day was so successful?
David, you're going to have to educate me.
Because Winston Churchill and Eisenhower, before they stormed the beaches, they told the boys, we have a plan to pay for this. We know how to pay for this. You don't send... our fathers, or your grandfather, when they stormed the beaches of Anzio, if they weren't certain that all this was going to be paid for, they didn't want to leave you, their grandchildren, with intergenerational debt that they repeat. I mean, I gotta say, I love Bernie. I do. I'm an old lefty from way back, but I gotta say,
an old lefty from way back.
I gotta say. I gotta say,
Yeah. So I've been to Anzio.
You've been to where?
Anzio. Went to Anzio.
Anzio.
Yeah. I went to Anzio.
In Italy.
In Italy, yeah. My friend David Waterman. We reenacted his grandfather having his leg blown off with army men, and made a little video.
That sounds like respecting.
You think that's funny? See, you think this is funny? Well, do you know that Bob Dole lost his black tip felt pen at Anzio? And you think that's funny? You think that's funny? You're making fun of the greatest generation. Okay, but see, this is not how you win in November.
No,
you hate our troops. You hate our troops.
All right, so just be a little bit more. I mean, you've made it clear that you, in principle, support Sanders, that you're an old-time lefty, so of course you want everything that Bernie
From way
wants.
back.
From way back.
Like David Brooks.
Like David Brooks. You and David Brooks probably in the, well, I don't know, were you guys in the SDS together or?
Snick.
But so who are you supporting? Who is it that you think should be the nominee then? I mean, if you have such a clear-eyed vision as to who can win in the general election.
I want somebody who can defeat Trump because he is more than an existential crisis. He is a threat to our democracy, and we need to put aside our differences and pick the candidate who can beat Trump in November. Kamala, I think we should try to get her to come back in, and she can win. I just think if we apologize for, poring over her policies and holding her accountable for everything she said and did, it was wrong to lock up the parents of truants. She should have locked up the truants. I think you get them early into the system.
More time for them to get reformed.
More time to, I didn't hear what you said. What?
To get them reformed.
Sorry?
The earlier you get the kids into the system, the criminal justice system, the more time for them to get reformed.
I don't know about that. That seems kind of ambitious to me. Can we afford to lock them up and reform them? I mean, that sounds fiscally irresponsible. I mean, in principle, it would be nice if prison was more than being punitive and locking up people of color. In principle, I'm against that, but I don't know if we can reform these super predators.
David,
these 16-year-old kids who don't go to school. These people are dangerous.
David.
So I'm guessing you didn't like that tweet from Shuja Hader saying that someone should lock up Kamala's parents because she dropped out.
First of all, I just want to say that I love hearing the voice of somebody with an identity. I don't know who you are, but you have an identity, and I respect your struggle. And I want to appeal to that. And I'm for what you want. As long as you don't, I don't know who you are, but your struggle is my struggle, so long as you don't want to raise my taxes or unionize.
That's Jamie.
Yeah, that really means a lot to me.
Jamie, I want everything you want so long as it's not a union, or I'd like you to have a choice. If you not to unionize, or make a livable wage. But your identity, I am thoroughly behind whatever your identity is.
David, Brandon Sutton's in studio.
Sir, if I might jump in here 1 second. I'm a black speaking real quick, so I also have an identity. I've been floating the idea that.
Well, let me just say. I am 100%. Malcolm and Martin. I read their speeches, and the thing about Malcolm and Martin was that it wasn't digging up the past. They weren't divisive. They didn't say, "Oh, the white man did this to us." They were forward thinking, and they told all Americans to lean in and know your worth. Right? Am I right?
First, I want to thank you for your allyship, and also, of course, you're correct. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. were famously uncritical of white people, but I again,
they said go slowly, and they talked to, and Martin. If you read Dr. King, and I call him Dr. King, and so I'd like you to pause there and just think about the fact that I called him Dr. King and the license that affords me now. Dr. King said we need to go slowly. If you read his speeches, and Malcolm, let's go slowly. Let's not rush things. Didn't he say that?
Multiple times. That was his most famous speech, the March on Washington for Equality and a Slow Incremental Change. They often leave that second part out. I'm sure you're well aware.
Yes, thank you. Can you tell me all your identities so I can play to them?
Well, I lie at the intersection.
So you say you're African American.
I'm African American. I am also of average height, 5'9", 5'11" in boots, Timbs.
Okay, need more.
So
let's move on. I just need to know people's identity, because that's the most important thing to me.
I was just going to ask.
Do you like? You know who I like? I like Tyler Perry. I'll tell you why. Tyler Perry. Do you like Tyler Perry? I think he gave the Democrats. Did you see the debates? They held the debates in Tyler Perry's studios in Atlanta, and that was a big tent thing to do, to hold the debates in that was the Democratic Party's Medea moment. Because Tyler Perry, that's a right to work state. And the Tyler Perry studios are non-union, and they're being sanctioned by the Writers Guild and AFTRA because Tyler Perry believes in choice. Tyler Perry, he said, I could produce my movies in Hollywood and choose to pay my actors and writers a livable wage, but I believe in choice. I'm choosing to pay my employees starvation wages.
So I agree
that's what America is about, choice.
So I agree with 99% of what you just said, but I want to push back a little bit.
Thank you.
And I feel as though, no, thank you.
Don't be aggressive with me. Are you being aggressive?
No,
What do you mean push back?
I'm going to take it a step further, actually.
What do you mean push back?
I'm going to take it a little bit step further. I think that they could have had Medea on the panel. I think that, there was room on that moderator panel for Medea, for Tyler Perry himself, to be questioning the candidates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, stop silencing women of color's voices.
Yes, absolutely. I thought it was very brave of the Democrats to have the debate in the Tyler Perry studios, which speak volumes to the value of a right-to-work state. And this is what I like about Joe Biden, that he knows the middle class was built by unions, and he loves unions, but he's not afraid to take contributions from people who destroy unions. Big tent. Big tent. Big tent. Hair? No hair. Brown teeth? White teeth.
So I'm sorry. I just want to see if we could summarize all of this. You're voting for Klobuchar?
Yes. Listen. I too have a father who's an alcoholic, and I don't know what her policy is, but when she talked about her father looking for grace and giving up drinking, I thought, I like this woman. I like her. I like her identity.
Well, I like her
because
resonance.
I identified with her identity. She has a father who was an alcoholic, and that spoke to me.
Well, David, this has been it's been very illuminating, and I think there's a lot of stuff that we need to think about.
Oh my God.
I think you've given us a lot of food for thought today, and
Thank you.
maybe we'll digest this and come back with a slightly different tone in our show.
Yeah, thanks for sticking up for my identity.
I love your identity. And do I know all of it? I know. I mean, it seems to be a high-pitched voice, so I'm going to assume it may not be a woman. You may be a person of shortness. I don't know.
No, that's me.
You're a person of.
I mean,
whatever,
I'm not
whatever
tall.
your identity. You're tall.
I'm not tall.
But you have a high voice. But you have may I say, you have a voice that if I were testifying in court and a lawyer asked me to identify your voice, my conjecture would be a person of femininity? Is that am I respecting you?
In what context would a lawyer ever say, can you tell from the sound of that voice what the identity of the person is? What context would that question
during the OJ trial, there was a conversation about whether or not somebody had an African American voice or not, whether or not you could tell if a person was African American or not on the phone. And I made a promise to myself after that I would never decide a person's identity just by the sound of their voice, because that's what this country is about, identity.
100%.
Well,
yes, 100%. Listen, whether you're a man, a woman, a person of shortness, I don't care, as long as you don't unionize or ask for a livable wage or raise my taxes. But I support everything about you as long as I can keep my money. and
this is everything that we talk. Thank you. Just distilled the entire modern professional class and Democratic Party and most major media personalities.
Thank you for your service.
Yes, David, we appreciate your coming on. Like I say, it'll give us a lot to think about.
Okay. Did I win? Because I'm trying to show you how to win in November.
I feel like you certainly won on it depends on what the metric is, but I think certainly there are metrics in which you won today. And so,
give Mayor Pete a chance. Give Mayor Pete. Just listen to Mayor Pete with fresh eyes and fresh ears.
We will do that.
McKinsey, gotta love McKinsey.
David Feldman, and David, my understanding is your show is 8 days a week. Is that right?
8 days a week. We added an extra day in the calendar, and each episode is 29 hours. I have to admit, 4 of those hours are a waste of everybody's time, but there's a pony somewhere in all that horse shit.
The David Feldman
and
show.
I'd like to invite, and it's for all identities.
Yes,
for all identities.
Very, very big tent. David Feldman, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
There you go.
That's the funniest thing that's ever happened. And it's also terrifying because it's like
good to have centrists on the show, though.
Yeah, it is. It's important.
It's finally to have that perspective fully articulated.
Look, we're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half of the program, wherein we will take some of your phone calls. We'll talk a little bit more, some of the clips that we have, and we'll watch a really heartfelt a song from a Purdue National Sales Conference in Phoenix back in 2011. Purdue, the manufacturers of OxyContin. And 2011, of course, was probably at their peak profitability and setting up a multitude of generations for incredible immiseration. And
it's good to see what they were doing with that profit at the height of their popularity.
Exactly. All right, quick break. Be right back. Fun half. Oh, wait, what am I talking about? Hey, folks, don't forget, this program relies on your support. You can become a member by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you are supporting this show, and we give you extra content in addition to that. And you get the first half of the show without commercials. So it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. You can gift a show, I think, there as well. I don't know if Cuck Nation still works as a URL, but I think if you go to jointhemajorityreport.com, you can. It seems to time out now. I think we didn't, but you can gift a subscription. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. But right now, if you go to Just Coffee, they have a 30% off sale. So you can try any of the types of Just Coffee there. You can try the Majority Report blend. You will love it. Also, don't forget the AM Quickie. You can sign up for that for free, ladies and gentlemen. Get the full show for free. 5 minutes every morning, top headlines at amquickie.com. Today is Friday. At one point this week, it was Tuesday. Michael, what happened?
Incredible show with Big Woz, Wozniak Lambre, and Slavoj Žižek. Some people have told me that this was the most effective Žižek interview they've ever seen in English. And actually legit, because there's some lack of clarity about really, the depth of his thinking and what he's actually saying, and I think it actually came across really well. So I'm really excited about that. This Sunday's primer or illicit history is with Bronwyn Mehta from Cambridge University, and we're finally covering Egypt in depth on the illicit history series. So patreon.com/TMBS. Michael Brooks Show on YouTube. Get us to 100,000 subs. We're getting pretty close now. And I will say there's a link on the website to the February 7th Michael Brooks Show Bell House live show, the mega show. With so far, we've got Ilona Minkowski, Ben Burgess, Harvey K, and this gentleman.
This guy.
Very excited. Snag your tickets. Come see us.
Do I have to buy a ticket, or do I kind of just show up?
You have to purchase a ticket and wait in line. No, of course you're not. What are you talking about?
Brandon, why don't you plug your show?
Oh, yes. If you are interested in listening to more of me and my lovely co-host, Richard and Adair, you can find my podcast, The Discourse, on SoundCloud, on Spotify, on iTunes, just by searching The Discourse. The URL on SoundCloud is the easiest, probably, at soundcloud.com/expand the discourse.
Jamie.
This week on the Antifada, Sean sits down with fellow socialist train guy Justin Rosniak, a.k.a. Do Not Eat, to get at the real and sordid history behind Robert Zemeckis' 1988 blockbuster, Who Framed Roger Rabbit? How the hell was this crazy film made? What does it tell us about the history of public transit in Los Angeles and elsewhere? Why is Elon Musk full of crap? How would a rail fit into the Green New Deal and socialism more broadly? Most importantly, how did our fans get us to watch hentai? Patreon.com/theantifada.
Matt.
Literary Hangover. We did The Crucible by Arthur Miller. It's got both Salem witch trials and McCarthy era Red Scare stuff to it. So a little bit for everybody there. Check it out.
They're upset I'm dating Marilyn Monroe. It's like what they did to the witches. I better write a play.
Arthur Miller does not sound like that.
I do a guest appearance as Arthur Miller at the House Un-American Services Committee hearings. Oh, my bad, Senator McCarthy. You couldn't get Marilyn Monroe's number even if you tried.
Well, Chads are a marginalized group in this society, so.
Quick break, fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy, back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy, back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost as what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Danergy's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danergy.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder. I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
psych. Fuck 'em. Almost says what? Almost says what? Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
The alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
See Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here. I am a total pussy.
Lady. We're back, folks. It's the fun half. It was just here is a clip. This is on MSNBC last night. Chris Hayes had Bernie Sanders on the program last night to talk about college affordability, and Sanders makes it clear that Pete Buttigieg is poisoning the waters in some ways by spreading these sort of right-wing talking points, and he's not having it. Here it is.
What do you say to that argument that there's no reason to pay for people who can pay for free?
Well, I say Buttigieg is wrong on both counts. Number one, of course, when we talk about making higher education, public colleges and universities tuition-free, we mean not only college, but we mean trade schools as well. There are millions of good jobs out there in construction and all kinds of areas where people are good at working with their hands. They don't want to go to college. And of course, we are going to make tuition free for those people. So what he's saying is not accurate. Second of all, there is the issue of universality. I'm very glad that Mr. Buttigieg is worried that I have been too easy on upper income people and the millionaires and billionaires, that I'm going to allow their kids to go to public colleges and universities, just by the way, as they do go to public schools right now. Trump's kids can go to any public school, elementary school, high school in the country, tuition free. But the point is, I happen to believe that when you talk about programs like Social Security, like health care, like higher education, they should be universal. The way you pay for them, and the way I do it, not the way Buttigieg does it, is I do demand that at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, that the very rich will start paying their fair share of taxes, as will corporate America. You pay for it by raising revenue from the very rich, but then you say in a very simple way that any person who wants a higher education, college, trade school should be able to do it. You know, right now, that's what we do with Social Security. It is a popular program. It is a universal program.
I mean, this is the thing, that if you are so inclined to the concept of means testing, there is a very, very effective way of, for all intents and purposes, means testing benefits. You make them universal and you increase taxes in a progressive nature. It is far more efficient than trying to determine whether people qualify. It ends up being far more fair and just. It creates a lot less resent about these programs, and it makes for a better society. It's easy.
This is going to sound rude because it is, but because it just is rude. I don't think Pete Buttigieg is very smart. I think that he is if you listen to him speak, even that clip before that we saw when he was talking at the town hall, he sounds like a machine learning algorithm going haywire. And he just throws out words like freedom and ideology and fairness. And then he peppers in some Republican framing, and that's it. And that the appeal of a Pete Buttigieg type figure, it really feels like he is only meant to appeal to other people like Pete Buttigieg, other people who happen to occupy a lot of high level positions across the politics and the media, who see some kind of affinity with his life story of being a Rhodes Scholar and being a Harvard educated so and so and being a consultant, and people who have been conditioned to believe that those things are substantial enough to count as being intelligent in some broad, socially valuable way. But then you listen to him say things like, well, we can't, like, you think it's fair if the children of billionaires go to college? We should be means testing. But that doesn't even make sense on a practical level. Like you mentioned, it's like, because theoretically, I would have to imagine that the cost of creating a bureaucracy to means test
without a doubt
would cost more than paying for the kids to just go to
without
school.
A doubt.
That's the argument of an ideologue, right? That's of a purely or a liar, right?
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, first of all, without a doubt, there is no doubt that to create a system where it would examine individuals whose parents have millions of dollars, right? And then also to examine whether or not are they trying to get around it, and to what extent, not to mention the problematic nature of just sort of saying like we're going to attribute this wealth to you as a student versus you and your parents. But putting that aside, that mechanism and that effort right there would cost more than you would save for the number of people who would actually apply and try and get into these programs. But do you think that do you think he doesn't know this? I mean, don't you think that it's really less of a case of he's not intelligent enough to know this, but rather he is a trained consultant whose job it is to go in and assess the situation and say stuff that makes it sound like he's adding value, even though he may not know what the situation is?
Intelligence is such a vague metric, right? You talking about Biden challenging people to an IQ test, right? The way we indicate intelligence within our political system is so heavily reliant on.
I guess my point is, I think he's just being. I think he's just a liar.
I think he's being disingenuous. I think he's being a liar. But there are people who actually believe that, right? There are people who think that, wow, he's blowing my mind with facts and logic, right? And like, this is what a smart person sounds like. This is what a smart person, how they consider problems. But from an ethical perspective, it doesn't make sense. From a practical perspective, it doesn't make any sense. It's just pure ideology. Like the only way you can make sense of an argument that we should not provide basic services to the children of billionaires in exchange for being citizens, right? But really to offset taxes is if you just cannot conceptualize why universal programs should be things that exist, why we should have roads, why we should have public school, why we should have any of those things. And that's just neoliberalism. I hate to use the N-word on your show because I know it's a big thing, but just the idea of going back to what about trade schools? What about people who don't want to go to college? The idea, the question to that would be, okay, well, what about trade school? We need plumbers, we need electricians, we need all those people, of course, right? But based on the way our system works, it's like, would you support those people who didn't go to college, who didn't go to law school, running for president? Would you support a plumber running for president in your position, or would that be disqualifying? Because if that's the case, if you would not support somebody who doesn't have a very shallow branch of expertise to be in political space you are, then you should support free college. You should support giving people the opportunities that you would to advance to the highest level of society. Right? That seems to be a fundamental flaw in that logic, where we have certain we have certain heights that need to be reached. We have certain resources that need to be afforded, like healthcare, that often requires you to have a job that pays for healthcare through employers, which many people who have menial jobs or manual labor jobs don't have. So if you're not in favor of having universal programs, if you're not in favor of supporting universal public education, are you at least in favor of dissolving or having a cultural conversation about, changing how we consider that stuff, right?
Yeah.
If you would not let somebody who didn't go to college run for president, then you don't have a right to essentially argue that people shouldn't have everyone should have access to college.
No, he's the most overly credentialed person in the world, and that's his whole shtick. That's his thing. So for him to turn around and say like, oh, well, the world needs ditch diggers too, it's like a real let them eat cake moment for him.
Right. And on top of which, of course, the programs that he's criticizing include more robust support for apprenticeships for the trades as well as vocational schools. And he has virtually none of that.
I just want to say, I think I agree so much with everything you just said, and we need to do both. Obviously, we need to have those universal programs and support people in all paths, and really genuinely uproot those. And you know, I got to put in a plug for.
But here's the thing: if you were to say to Pete Buttigieg, "Would you support a plumber for president?"
He would pretend.
He would immediately go, "Of course I will. Of course I would. Are you kidding?"
Right.
Yes, absolutely. Right. I've been saying to people around the office,
I will say
we should
that
have more plumbers.
I think you're right because he's a BSer, but I remember that actually really disturbed me about literally the one thing about Scott Walker that was redeemable was that he was a college dropout who made his way to the governorship. That's objective.
Senator.
No, Scott Walker was governor of Wisconsin.
Oh, Scott Walker. Oh, okay,
Scott
sorry.
Walker.
I thought you were talking about Scotty Brown.
No, Scotty B went through law school, actually. Speaking of not,
I just remember he was
not confusing.
He was a male model, though.
Yeah, not confusing credentials with intelligence. Right. That would be a good example right there. But, you know, that was great. That was the one thing I remember reading about Scott Walker. I was like, that's unbelievably impressive.
Right.
And a lot of people, you know, even anecdotally, that was like their first strike against him was not, this guy is one of the most dangerous horrifying records in the country.
Right.
It was, that guy didn't go to college. How could he possibly be president? And that is so toxic and so, I'll put in a Lula plug. Lula didn't go to college. Best, most strategic president of the 21st century so far.
6 degrees of Lula. Can I just add, as a downwardly mobile child of the professional managerial class who, went to the fancy schools and the faux meritocracy gauntlet, like they really do convince you that kind of narrow book smarts is the only kind of intelligence that counts and the only kind that matters. And like, I knew that the meritocracy was something of a lie. I knew it on an intellectual level. And then I got to Columbia and I met multiple dudes there who thought that girls peed out of their vagina holes. So that should tell you something.
No, sorry, good.
As somebody,
thank you.
As someone with an MPH from the School of Hard Knocks, much like Cory Booker, I will say this though. I have to, at least make the argument that I think that the devaluation of the value of people who have jobs like plumber and manual and factory workers and manual labor is a result of the essentially the dissolution of labor organizing. Right. It's like there is not an organized labor movement in the United States of America to advocate for the value of labor, essentially, the social value, the cultural value of labor. And so it's easy for someone like Pete Buttigieg, who is just going to become up on stage and BS and go, oh yeah, of course I support plumbers or electricians or, welders running for president, to lie. But we know that he wouldn't. And we know that people who are listening to him would not, because the first thing you hear is about like, well, they're the most qualified candidate. Who's the most qualified? And
right.
Pete Buttigieg, I think Chomsky said it, Pete Buttigieg is a walking resume.
Right, exactly. And also that labor power was the only institutional basis upon which you do produce a Lula, or even at a different time in this country. You just even read some book about the 60s and it's not radical at all, but like in like a conservative Democratic administration like Kennedy, which it was relative to the Democratic Party as far as I understand. And it's like, oh, we need to have a national economic summit. So we're going to have some CEOs, but we need Walter Reuther needs to be there. It was just a given that labor was at the center.
Labor was a much bigger part of the Democratic Party.
And they were highly respected and understood to be extremely important strategists and leaders.
Let's go to the phones. You call them from a 415 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 415. 415. Hello. Let's see. Oh, they seem to be gone. Let's go calling from a 717 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Nitin from Maryland.
Nitin from Maryland.
Long-time listener.
Welcome to the program.
First-time caller. Couple things, but I'll make it quick. Anyone who wants to learn about the situation unfolding in Kashmir should read Dexter Filkin's piece in the New Yorker about Modi and the RSS. My grandpa is generally like pro-INC. He was sympathetic to revoking Article 370, and I think it's largely because the Indian media is like complicit and they help Modi push his narrative because they play into a lot of the Islamophobia. And also, I was, by the way, Mike, I was listening to your show with.
I'm sorry. Hold on one second. Did you say in the New Yorker or the New York Times?
New Yorker, Dexter Filkins.
The New Yorker.
It's a great piece.
Okay.
I read it.
Yeah. Also, I was listening to your show, Mike, earlier with Waz this week, and as a fan of the NBA, I really enjoyed that. But I think an interesting topic to discuss might be the socialist tendencies of the NBA, with like the salary cap and the luxury tax that kind of help maintain a competitive balance.
Huh.
But anyway, my question is about. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, sorry. My question is about what's going on with France right now. Currently, the general strike is underway. I know you guys are probably going to touch on that, but I was just wondering, what do you guys think is the possibility that something like that is possible in the United States?
That's a good question. Let me let you go, and we will answer it. In fact, let's show some footage of. It was about 1.5 million people who supposedly protested yesterday. It was a general strike across the country to protest austerity. And here is a clip of, and I don't know where this is. I think this was in Paris, but and it is in Paris. Police officers moving in on protesters, and the firefighters, Parisian firefighters, basically got to the front of the marching protesters with their hands up and basically walked the police backwards.
I'm curious how police are trained, if they're trained to avoid this sort of symbolic type of retreat like this, because they don't want to smash firemen's heads in because they're telling them to move back, but it does look bad for them.
In Paris or in America?
That's another good
smash anybody's head in America. I mean, but they people should know. I mean, they've been extremely brutal, actually, at all of the Yellow Vest protests. There's a lot of footage you can look up of Parisian police, like, cracking heads with the best of them globally. So this is something. This is not like friendly police. What I'm trying to say.
There's just a completely different, I think, just a cultural value to protest in these countries. Now, part of it is that. The governments are far more responsive, frankly, to protest. But I mean, 1.5 million people. How many people are in France? I mean, I'm trying to figure out what the equivalent of.
It's like 40 million.
I think it's 40 million. I will say on the flip
you're
side,
talking about the equivalent of really something like 15 million people in this country in one day protesting, and the closest I think we've ever had is probably. Maybe 1 million plus during the Iraq War, and in any given day. But it's also, you got to remember, I guess the population is 67 million in France.
And those were protests. Those weren't general strikes that shut down the country.
They weren't strikes, no. And we haven't had that type of like labor action, like sort of broad labor action since like the Wildcat strike.
We're a number of dialectic stages away from that sort of thing in America.
Well, there's a reason for that, and it's that the early versions of the police here were founded primarily to put down these labor actions in a really violent way.
The Pinkertons, yeah.
And it just developed from there. And if we think that wouldn't happen again, if there was widespread labor unrest here, we're wrong, but that doesn't mean that it's not possible.
Just jump in quickly. I mean, yeah, there's been just an entire, essentially erosion of the labor movement. But also, I would have to, contend that our political media culture is one that entirely devalues mass politics, right? The idea of mass political movements, just in their role in shaping our history of change, of political change in this country, has been kind of entirely painted over in favor of a more electorally focused, in vaguer sort of narrative that paints like every movement as being kind of this pursuit of getting enough literal information to the right electoral candidate, to the right politicians who then reify the demands of the civil rights movement or the women's rights movement or the LGBTQ movement into law once they find out enough information. You can see it now too. There's such a disdain for the idea that, okay, well, how are people going to get Medicare for all to pass? Are they going to be marching in the streets? Are they going to be marching in the streets demanding that Mitch McConnell pass the law? That might not work. It might not work in America depending on what happens in response to it. But for those people who think like that, I wonder what they think has led to the changes that we've seen throughout the history of America, right? Over the past 200 years. It's like they don't seem to have that understanding of history.
Well, it also sort of feels like people think that things don't change. I mean, I think if your entire political life was, your inputs were, basically mid-70s until now, you would look at, to the extent that there were protests and say it really was meaningless.
But you wouldn't see a systemic. But I think you're right, though. I mean, I think that the narratives we tell are about there's so many accounts of even really important meetings, but King came in and met with Johnson, and there were a bunch of people outside. And there was a bunch of stuff happening, but it's the meeting that mattered. And it's actually, really, it was the people outside creating the context for the meeting. I would say in a way, Colombia might be more similar to who we are than France in terms of a right-wing, political and obviously more violent, but extremely anti-union movement. They've been going for a while now. And just a couple of days ago, a very hard right president just had to publicly, in fact, acknowledge what they were doing. And I don't trust Duque for a second, but they did put enough heat on the streets for a very reactionary president to not only listen to wage demands, but part of what they're protesting about is honoring the peace deal with the FARC, which goes to the entirety of the whole reason that guy is president. And here, to your point, Sam, in Colombia, there is a right-wing part of the electorate. That is not all top down from the elites. Right-wing candidates win national elections. So that's having that result in Colombia, which I would say is more analogous to here than France.
Yeah, I mean,
so
people voted for Trump
it matters.
Here. Here's why I've got some hope for the future of class struggle in this country. The more I learn about history and the history of class struggle, which some might say is all history, throughout the course of our country's history, capital has always found a way to buy their way out of class struggle. It used to be with the Western frontier. We don't have that anymore. It used to be with home ownership and Levittown and suburban communities that were planned to be a civilizing, a conservative force on the average American worker and make them think that I've got about as good a life as my boss does. It keeps them from being congregated, keeps them from congregating after work. I think it was Levitt himself who said a man who owns a home could never be a communist. And those things have gone away, and I don't think that they're coming back. My generation, we're never going to own anything. We don't really want to, a lot of us don't want to own anything. We would much rather have nice public housing that we can live in and not pay too much in rent than this house that we just sink all of our savings and our money into. So I have hope for the future because I don't think that these things are coming back.
Well, that was sort of my point was, if you looked only at the last 40 years and just assumed that we were going to, this is the new normal and this is always going to be this way. But I think, different generations emerge under different contexts and what becomes possible again changes. And so you see this reemergence of teacher strikes over the past couple of years and sort of an increasing number of strikes, labor actions. You start to think that maybe the way that people are getting oriented has changed. So,
and even UBI is another version of what you're talking about. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and I'm also optimistic as well. I think that now that we have a lot of industries, a lot of the major labor movements and strikes of the early, 20th century, late 20th century, early, the late 19th century, early 20th century were in the coal industry, in the carbon industry, and in manufacturing, in these industries that had the ability to grind, these industries that employed lots of people and had the ability to grind society to a halt in a way that we're finally getting to another place again where we have these fast food, Walmart, these large scale, Amazon, these people, like these organizations that employ a large segment of the population, and these people can have, if not class solidarity, labor solidarity. Like we do the same thing. We all, we all package boxes.
Well, I think also, one of the things that, and I probably referenced this book maybe more than any other book that we've done this year was, what was it? The one about the GM. I can't remember what wrecked. Yeah, that I suspect. I don't know this for a fact, but I suspect that places like Walmart and Amazon have structured their workforce in such a way that it does not have the vulnerabilities, let's say, that the car companies had in the 50s to a small number of employees of, basically destroying the supply chain by being able to just step out of it and halting everything in production. I mean, they had a lot more labor leverage. Few people had more sort of leverage than I suspect that people have today. Like, I mean, yes, there is a more solidarity insofar as like we have the same. I live in Arkansas and I live in Georgia, or I live in Maine, and our lives are actually strikingly similar because of the nature of the work that we do. Makes it somewhat easier to organize, but you need to have mass movements there, as opposed to like 50 people working in one part of the supply chain that can stop production on the line. And so you can have redundancy in terms of the labor action. And it's like, okay, we got the guys doing the ball bearings for the steering, the rack and pin steering, and they're not delivering. And then also the guys delivering the brake pads are not delivering, and it's wiped out our entire production.
Some guy who was a labor organizer told me years ago, he was like, if you're actually interested in like the future of how this stuff is going to work and strategies, you need to read like business management books. You should read books about like zero time management or Edward S. Deming and all of these ideas coming from MIT about how you actually like build a factory for maximum efficiency.
Right, because then you can find the weak part and you take it out.
Yeah.
Calling from an 810 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey there, Sam. It's Spencer. I'm not calling with a prank call today. It's just wanted to actually like talk about something serious. I'm a huge pro wrestling fan, and David Starr, famous Jewish pro wrestler, is working to unionize basically the independent scene, and WWE, AEW, New Japan, all that stuff. He wants to create a very strong unionized movement, and it's just something I wanted to shout out.
Well, that sounds pretty cool. Maybe we should have him on as a Friday guest.
That'd be awesome.
I had him on to talk about this. He's great, and he should be a Friday guest. I think he's going to be in Brooklyn soon. And even this is a world I know absolutely nothing about, so it's kind of cool to even just learn like how it works. Like a professional independent wrestler based in London. Like, what does your life look like? And he's got good politics too. Yep. It's also insane.
Fantastic stuff.
It's also
been a long time since I watched wrestling. I have to admit, but
Sam's a big fan of Ric Flair.
I was a big fan of like Chief Jay Strongbow and Andre the Giant and gosh, I mean that era, which was like literally 40 years ago. Appreciate the call.
Thank you.
Calling from a 484 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Hello? Did you butt
Hi,
dial?
is this me?
Yeah, it is you. Who's this?
Hey, Sam. How's it going? It's Cody calling from PA again.
Cody from PA again. What's on your mind?
Yep. You guys were touching base on this earlier. I'd just like to talk about Colombia. I know Mike did a show, I think, post-game with Luisa Ospina. She's a labor leader activist. I was wondering if I could just get like a quick unlock really fast, if that's cool. I don't know.
What do you mean?
like a primer of the situation of what's been going on.
They've been demonstrating.
I've just been kind of hearing what
they've been demonstrating for a couple of months now. There's demonstrations basically against neoliberalism across Latin America, and they are talking about cuts to the pension system and other austerities. Then they actually want new protections in for like the kind of like Uber sector, I think you could call it. And people who have demilitarized from the FARC are still basically, getting murdered by hit squads, and they want some type of honoring of the peace process. That was my understanding of the demand base, and so they're, that's it.
Appreciate the call.
Yep.
Thanks, Cody. Calling from Skype. Don't know who it is. Hello.
Hi, this is Jake from Japan. Hey, guys.
Jake from Japan. What's on your mind, Jake?
Oh, a lot. I need to talk about. So there's actually a primary that actually doesn't happen in America, but for the Democrats. I need to just mention this real quick. So, let's see here. Democrats abroad. There is 21 delegates that are up, and this happens, internationally for all people outside of America that are American. Now, I'm a supporter of Bernie, and I want everyone to know that in order for him to get on this, he has to get like 300 signatures for like a petition.
Okay.
I find this odd. I would assume that he already has these, but apparently from what I could get from the internet, only Warren and Buttigieg are on that. I would assume that he would eventually get on that, but just in case, I just want to put that out there so everyone can get on and sign up for him.
All right.
Can I just give the website real quick?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. So it's www.democratsabroad.org/Sanders-petition.
Okay,
And
so
then
it's
that's
democratsabroad.org/Sanders-petition.
Yeah, and so that's basically it, I would say.
Okay. All right, we're going to put that in our descriptions, and we will put it on the website. Thank you so much for the call. Going to the IMs, ladies and gentlemen. Negro Spiritual. I spit chai latte all over my expensive electronics, which mean the world to me, when he first said the young person transitioning could be our first African-American president. And I am not even mad. Derek from New Jersey. Can I get a shofar for Sackler and all other activists whose hard work has paid off, in that Tufts has responded to community pressure and completely removed the Sackler name from all its schools, buildings, and other entities, and will no longer accept money from this family? Yes, you can. And in honor of Tufts responding to the Sackler program, let's go back and look at Purdue Pharmaceuticals was the name of the company. Now, I don't know if the Sacklers still own it, but they I think they do, right? I mean, aren't they trying to distance themselves? They are the ones who developed. They created OxyContin, which was marketed as a opioid that was less addictive than other opioids. Because of a special time-release capsule that supposedly would, whatever. And it appears, anyways, that they, in fact, had reason to believe that their marketing campaign was an inaccurate description of this stuff. Plus, they were marketing it largely arguably off-label. In other words, usage, because it was supposedly less addictive, like you could use it for a lot more things. And here is, just to give you a sense of what was really driving this, it was money. There is culpability not just with a place like Purdue, but the 3 or 4 national distributors of this drug. They had a statutory obligation to report when they saw spikes or abnormalities with how many pills were being sold in certain areas of the country. In fact, they tried to retroactively try and change this law so that they could get out of the lawsuits that they are now being subjected to. And then, of course, there were pill mills on the ground in various areas. But here's what really ultimately got the ball rolling. Sales representatives who were super psyched that they were blowing it up, as it were, in terms of their sales. And so they bring to you this song from the 2011 Purdue, I guess, like
company retreat,
opioid sales retreat in Phoenix, Arizona. Here's some of those company reps kicking it out to a Tao Cruz song, Dynamite.
Got the right plan, 'cause we gon' rock this launch. We gon' get it right. We gon' light it up like it's dynamite. 'Cause I sold you once, now I sold you twice. They gon' light it up like it's dynamite.
All right, in other words, let me explain to you
stuff like that.
Let me explain to you what the song was about. Well, I'm going to rock this lunch. I've sold you once on OxyContin, and now I'm going to sell you again. In fact, I'm going to sell you so many of these pills that you're going to be delirious. In fact, it's going to blow up. It's going to blow up the lives of many of your patients. It's going to blow up the budgets of municipalities and states as they deal with this. It's going to literally blow up people's, capacity to stay alive in the form of incredible amounts of opioid deaths. And it's going to blow up the trend of increased longevity amongst certain segments of our population.
This might just make me seem like an older urban youth, but like I preferred the song the first time when it was called the 10 Crack Commandments. But now they're not even trying anymore. Biggie,
Do you think they could pull that cover off?
Back when Biggie was rapping about dealing crack in the inner city, like that had a certain amount of class to it. This is just this is extreme Pete Buttigieg energy. This is, if you've ever wondered why the Panic at the Disco, High Hopes thing, like this is that world that comes from. Like they loved this though. When they played this at Purdue Pharma at their little get-togethers at their end of year meeting, they loved it. Like
I can. It's so easy for me to imagine.
That's
exactly.
Oh my God!
They're sitting around. This was at everybody's sitting in a round table having like some type of lunch. They have now landed on the dessert, which is like some type of like indescribable mousse type of thing with whipped cream on top, and people are losing it at this. They are loving it.
Getting loose.
In fact, they probably played it twice.
They probably showed their family when they got home. Like, did you see this guy? I work with him. It's so funny, right? I mean, everyone loves Teo Cruz in 2000.
Everybody, get your phones out. You're gonna want to record this.
It's gonna be great.
Well, this is the type of product that only capitalism can produce, right? Because if it wasn't for capitalism, this would have just been a karaoke night.
Yeah.
Frankly, I mean, this is produced by the same people who made Rebecca Black's Friday video. Like they just make music videos going around. But I will say, Hannah Arendt talked about the banality of evil, but this is like the corniness of evil. This is like, just like the tackiness of evil.
All of these people belong in jail.
When we were in Boston doing something called the Comedy Lab, John Benjamin and I, Mike Lee, David Waterman, Rich Gustis went and performed at a couple of these things. We did it for not for Stackland, but it was like we did a digital. I think it was Digital. Was that the name of the company, or Wang or something like that?
Wang Digital.
I think Digital. I think it was called
Digital Wang.
No, I can't remember. But it was uncomfortable because our brand of comedy did not
match.
There was a lot of like, let's get out of here quick after we were done with the show. The only part they liked was when you come out and reference them. You work them into the bit. Like, Hey, everybody, I'm a speaker. I'm a motivational speaker. And I'll tell you, the folks in RD, they stink. And then everybody's like, RD, RD, oh. And I know a lot of you probably have your paper clips coming from accounting. And that's the they tell you like to make those inside jokes, and it was pretty ugly stuff. JJ Cool. We literally, Benjamin and I, we were running out of this place, and we were like dressed as civilians as we were like hustling out of there, and we heard one guy say to another guy, it was down like on the Cape, and the guy says, "Jesus, that was bizarre," and somebody else said, "Bizarre's not the word." And JJ Cool. Hey, Sam, I think MR needs a regular Feldman history current affairs segment. I don't know if I've heard better still version of the centrist worldview. Indeed. Rube Davin. I know one thing Biden will be able to get done that Obama failed at. Biden will get his Social Security cuts. Yeah, I would imagine so. Dolink. Schiff said impeaching Trump will not be the end of holding others accountable, but Trump is the priority now. I've watched every hour of the hearings. Other hearings on C-SPAN also informative to issue. Dems very focused and well-informed in 2.5 hours this week of Undersecretary David Hale on how the administration's making a mess of Russia relationship and letting Putin get away with things. Schiff said, that's it. Wu-Tang Clank. Has everyone there seen The Irishman? One scene is so good.
I like De
Niro's daughter at school in the 50s talking about how important truck drivers were and how they all got good wages, health care, pensions, and the union stopped management from effing over regular people. Snoozin' Sarandon.
The politics is good.
Can I get a Snoozin' Sarandon? Can I get a shofar for my buddy in the YPG returning safely to Ohio? Wow. Yes. Okay, yeah, you get one.
Support our troops.
Leica. Hey, Sam, I was wondering if you saw the Netflix film The Laundromat. It's about how the Panama Papers came to light and how the scam worked. Meryl Streep plays the woman who figured it out. Not as good as The Big Short, but good. I have not seen it, but I will look for that.
Very, very, very odd filmmaking choices, but it's interesting.
Christo, I hate to admit it, but I was watching a show, but see if you can find the damning footage of Chris Matthews doing a so-called report on the British election on Hardball a couple of days ago, where not only does he mention Corbyn's anti-Semitism front and center, but catches himself saying Bernie before correctly pronouncing the Labour leader's actual name.
Bernie Corbyn hates Jews and is not known as a well-known disrespecter of Tip O'Neill. Then you have Boris Johnson. And then you got Jeremy Sanders. Then you have Jeremy Sanders, who doesn't even know that Bobby Kennedy went to California.
All right, got a bunch of people who have been hanging on for about an hour. We got one more call to take, and it's going to take the next one. 612 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, is this me?
It is you. Who is this? You are the final caller of the week, so there's some pressure.
Oh, this is awesome. Yeah, this is O'Reilly from Minneapolis.
O'Reilly or Riley?
Riley.
Riley from Minneapolis.
The O'Reilly factor.
So far, so good, Riley.
All right. Yeah, I just want to say that I appreciate all the work the MR crew does. Jamie, Matt, Mike, I appreciate everything you do, Brendan. I'm just a big fan of all of you, and I just want to say thank you. I actually just got done converting my grandmother from hating Bernie to voting for him in the primary. It's been a long year of talking and coercing. Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. Very difficult to get her from. I mean, she still loves Hillary Clinton, but I have her on the Bernie train now. So it's all thanks to your guys' work, and I really appreciate it. So keep up the good work.
Hell yeah.
Thank you.
How did you convince her?
Great call. How did you convince her?
Yeah, it was actually just kind of confronting her on like why she hated Bernie and kind of making her realize that just kind of like sharing like small posts at her, you know, like, oh, free college, and like, oh, like he's not a bad person. You're just kind of overwhelmed by the fact that Hillary Clinton lost and kind of hung up on that. And she just, I think on her own, just kind of realized that it was this hate that was kind of driving her to like not like Bernie, and realize that he is actually a really good candidate. And, you know, she's a smart person. So, and, you know, I think it's the hardest part is like, I want to do that for more people, but just getting her to do that over like a year has really been awesome to get through. Thank you guys for all that.
Appreciate the call.
Kind old man who wants everybody to have health care. What an asshole. Makes total sense. You should dislike him on behalf of a sociopath who's friends with Ghislaine Maxwell. Smart stuff.
All right, folks, that's it for our calls. We'll take a couple IMs, and then we'll get out of here. Christo, I hate to admit, oh, yeah, we did that. Libertarian podcaster. I was just wanted to piggyback on today's lamp ad and let your listeners know if you search the dark web with the code word Friedman, you can access millions of light bulbs outlawed by the illegitimate federal government. Pedantic listener, cucknation.org still works.
Are you sure? Because I just tried it. It didn't seem to work for me.
It didn't work for me either.
Maybe you're not cucks.
That needs to be rerouted to jointhemajorityreport.com.
I failed to connect with Cook Nation.
Connecticut Comrade, MR Crew, happy Friday. Do you think there still might be value in Sanders making the pitch or framing the conversation to certain people in the PMC that they are much closer in wealth and material concerns to the working class than, say, the billionaire class? For example, the median attorney salary is around $115,000, so a terminal illness would likely still cause severe financial hardship. I'm an attorney, and I find the strategy is somewhat convincing as a toehold for talking to other PMCs I talk to that think Bernie is too radical. I think this general frame of mind would be helpful, that billionaires essentially have everyone else fighting each other over scraps, and PMCs should find more solidarity with the working class rather than the ruling class. I mean, if it works, I mean, my sense is that one of the things that's appealing to folks like attorneys, in particular, about Elizabeth Warren is just that she approaches things like a lawyer, and because she is one. But I mean, I think there's something to that. I don't know about the too radical thing. I think I think the point is you go in and you say, like, you need someone who is going to be at the furthest point to the left because of all the other forces that are going to try and pull stuff to the right.
And the PMC discourse, the professional managerial class, for those not in the know, I feel like we throw those letters around a lot. There's been a lot of disagreement lately on whether the members of this class, A, are a real class in the first place, and B, can be convinced to adopt some sort of class struggle politics. And I think there's a good argument to be made that as more and more of us become proletarianized and precarious wage workers, that they will side with the class struggle, the workers' candidate, right? But I don't think that the professional managerial class should ever be centered or leading this coalition, because they have proven somewhat fickle depending on their fortunes over time and where their class interests lie. I don't know. What do you think?
I think there's something seductive about like succeeding when everyone else is failing. I think there's something seductive when you're making like 90K, 100K, not even just like lawyers or attorneys. That's kind of a very specific social position who like they're being appealed to by like the aesthetics of a Warren candidacy, the technical rationality and coherence of it. But just the people who are like, I'm a project manager at a tech startup in Manhattan and I make 110K right out of school because I have, connections or I just got lucky, right? There's something appealing to realize that the world may be crumbling around you, but you're doing all right, and that's something you want to cling to, right? That's we use PMC now because I think that it's a very specific population that people can sort of like picture in their heads, like the Manhattanite yuppie class, essentially. But we're talking about centrists, right? We're talking about people who not necessarily their politics are left or right, but their politics are defined by their comfort within the current system, and trying to communicate to them that their comfort is incredibly precarious, and not precarious because they're because of a Bernie, but precarious because of capitalism, is a hurdle we have to be able to overcome, just broadly speaking, right? I think we have people like the people who worked at WeWork were PMC class, right? Yep. And they can complete collapse, and there'll be another one in a month, and there'll be another one in 2 months, and they'll just keep happening.
All right, I
recommend, if anyone wants to know more about this discourse, Alex Press had a great interview with Barbara Ehrenreich recently, who originally coined the term.
I didn't know that either. Quick couple more, and then we're out of here. Tim Pool's mom. I'm normally very liberal, but also very conservative after liberals were mean to my son, Tim. But I'm back to being liberal again after Biden called that guy fat.
Sedentary was funny.
Analog Wang.
Biden said fact, by the way.
Yeah,
he's going to say fact. Fact of the matter is.
Yeah.
No,
he said sedentary.
He wasn't body shaming. He was making a comment about his activity level.
Yeah. Analog Wang, when Biden brags about moving from the bottom 2/3 of his class to the top half, I hope people realize these percentages overlap. Indeed. Thames Darwin, Sam, it was nice working for MSNBC, wasn't it? Was that a function of the Chris Matthew things? They don't get that far in the show. They don't get far in the show at all.
I don't want him on anymore.
All right. Just two more IMs. Sorry, folks. Phoenix Convention Center employee from 2011. Thanks to the Affordable Care Act, I'll finally be able to go see a doctor for the chronic pain I suffer from because I work this low-wage, physically demanding job, serving shitty rubber chicken and steamed veggies to corporate types all day. Thankfully, my doctor said he could prescribe me some new pain medications that will allow me to keep working. Looking forward to the 2012 election. Hope Obama gets reelected. And the final IM of the day. Blonde, hairy legs.
Ah!
Hey, Jack, you want to talk crap about me? You think I'm not educated and don't have 3 degrees? I challenge you to an arm wrestling contest. I'll beat you like a drum, you damn Nancy. Ask Corn Pop about me. Folks, see you on Monday.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bulb. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive,